My first decomp, I will never forget it. It was in Kansas City, and it was in a Salvation Army apartment. So if you don't know, Salvation Army owns lots of real estate, actually, and they try to transition homeless people into these towers. This was like a 12, 15-story property, and it's independent living, so it's not assisted living. They had a man, a resident that lived there, that died and went undiscovered for, it was probably a week. When I got there, the woman that had called said she was so frustrated at how hard it was to find a crime scene cleaner. And of course it was. Back in 2005, I don't even know if I had a website then, but I was barely navigating all this stuff myself. I don't know how she ended up finding me, but she was exasperated off the length of time that it took for her to find me. I can only imagine back then, it was 20 years ago. And he died in his recliner. And this was my very first decomp, and I think it was my second job total. So I was working by myself, and let me tell you how difficult it is to handle a recliner by yourself. I had to get very creative. The woman that kind of gave me the idea, her son had been shot like assassinated style. He was on his couch, and in his living room apartment, they kicked in the door and then just point blank shot him right in the head. And I remember thinking, how the hell is this woman keeping it together? Like, I would have just been a basket case, but she was strong, very strong. So when I was working as a police officer, people would always assume, and to this day, people still assume this, when are the police coming back to clean this? And I'm like, no, they don't. And I thought, all the training that I've gotten, over 800 hours of training as a police officer, and not 1 minute of that training was spent on what do these poor people do after a family member has been murdered or passes away naturally and decomposes in their home. Not 1 minute of training was spent on that. Breaking down a recliner, you probably think, oh God, that's easy. He just died in a recliner. Let me tell you, it is anything but easy. You have fabric, you have metal, you have wood, you have cushioning, all in one piece of furniture. So if you use a Sawzall to cut up the wood, if that hits any fabric, it kicks or gets stuck. So you have to be very, very precise and detailed on how you break up the recliner. Meanwhile, it's dripping with his fluids on the butt part and seeping through the bottom, which is full of metal and coils. It was one of those lazy boys that oscillates. I took it apart and into pieces, and then I found a furniture dolly that I could just put the base on, and I wheeled it. Taking apart a mattress, especially a king size, by myself, extremely difficult. So what I did is I bought a furniture dolly, and then I put a piece of plywood on the bottom, and then I screwed in PVC arms almost onto the dolly. And the whole point of that was I could maneuver the mattress onto this dolly and wheel it out. There's no way to take a king size mattress out by myself. My wingspan isn't even that long. I still have that dolly to this day. I love it. You know, now the job would take me 45 minutes. It took me about 4 hours because I had to do it all by myself. And, I was just learning too. I had just gotten out of training, and it was trial and error. You're trying to be quiet at the same time as be efficient with your time. And it was certainly a learning experience. And honestly, all the mistakes I made, I wouldn't change it for anything. I never thought that I would be where I am today. And that hasn't been without hiccups either, of course. I feel like on your journey of growth, you're going to come into different obstacles that are going to pivot you into the right place that you're supposed to be. And when you fight that pivot or fight that change, that's when you're going to have some struggles. I've learned to just embrace it and just go with it. And whichever way it takes me is the way I'm supposed to go. Now I own several businesses, and I'm teaching other people how to get into crime scene cleaning business because I am so grateful of how it's changed my life. I came from nothing. I was on food stamps in college. I was making $42,000 a year as a police officer. So if I can do it with no experience, no help, no loans, then you can do it too.